Xbox. You know, I already know I'm about to get accused of being doom and gloom, all kinds of stuff, but we really got to break down this Xbox and the direction Microsoft is taking the brand. I don't know. We're going to see. What's going on, you guys? Gaming out here coming at you another video. Today we're going to be talking about Microsoft's direction with the Xbox brand. I've been very vocal. I'm not for it. I've been very vocal. It feels like they're stepping out of the industry in general. I've been very vocal about a lot of this stuff. And I'm going to be honest with you. What I'm seeing with all these layoffs, studio closures, everything under the sun, I kind of expected it because there's a lot of reasons that, you keep these smaller projects or you take bets. It's because you're focusing on hardware and you got more variety of ways of getting money than just selling the game. You got all the services that you can get on the streaming platforms that's on the hardware or the game itself. So when the hardware evaporates and they don't no longer care about that hardware and it's strictly just about making money off the games, you would naturally go more towards the bigger games because those are going to just naturally make you money. That's the way I perceive it. Does that mean it's 100% true? No. I don't know about any of this stuff. You guys know I'm very vocal on here. I'm just the outside person looking in, man. I'm just the outside person looking in. And what I see is it ain't looking good, man. It ain't looking good. Does that mean it's ever going to not improve? No, it doesn't mean that. It could definitely improve going into the future. But there's a dude over there on NeoJaf that has been kind of doing stuff really consistently. He's gotten a lot of stuff right. I remember seeing stuff of this individual showing up a while back. When it comes down to it, there are people in the industry that are, taking this dude as gossip. And even Jez Corden went on Twitter and he said something recently. And we're gonna go into this. I have zero idea how long this video is gonna be. I don't know. Uh, pull up, pull up a chair, get some popcorn, because we're gonna go right through it, man. We're gonna go right through it. So let's go through the first one here. Let's go through the first one, and this is what Jez Corden said on Twitter yesterday. Jez Corden said, Microsoft CFO Amy Hood has given Xbox an utterly unrealistic financial requirement that is going to continue hurting the division. This isn't over. Technically, this was 2 days ago. I meant to make this video yesterday, so my note says it's a day. But what does that pretty much say? Here's the thing when it comes to all this. Right now, Microsoft is in money-hungry mode. Normal the time when these companies make these huge investments, they don't necessarily think that they're going to get all that money back because obviously, they want the initial investment back and they want to make sure that they're able to make money going forward. Most of the time they got like 10, 15 year old plans. And this one felt, and this is my opinion, it felt very, very fast. Like the moment that ABK deal went through, it was like now it got to the point where I was being a little bit of a conspiracist on my own end. That was like, yo, this is like some behind the deal agreement they made with the FTC to get the ABK deal. Look, if you guys approve this deal, I will make everything multi-plat. We will no longer be an exclusive brand. To me, because there's a lot of variables that just didn't make sense going into this. So then we got the individual. His name is Sneaker SO. He tweeted yesterday. He said, "If folks only knew how bad things actually are." Now, keep in mind, this dude has been very accurate with a lot of things he's been saying. Extremely accurate. He even said back in February. So this is what happened in February. Now, I could probably make this a little bigger. We'll make that bigger here in a second. But he even said back in February some stuff that, like, you guys know how I've kind of been very unfair with Phil on, whether or not Phil is actually with the direction. Because to me, it felt like everyone's with it. But according to this person, and I do believe him. Someone said, I feel for fair. He's going to get demolished by hardcore Xbox fans, but I feel he truly believes that the best way forward for this is going multiplayer. Look, even Sony is releasing their exclusives to Windows. He said this February the 4th, 2024. It's a long time ago. And he said Phil was one of the folks most against releasing titles on other platforms. He's not the one making the call. It's being made for him. All right, so we have been very vocal that we think that for the most part, Phil Spencer. It's not that he's not running the Xbox brand and the gaming division in general. It's just a lot of these decisions are out of his, out of his house. A lot more. He probably does a lot of the day-to-day stuff, but most likely Satya pulled him in an office and said, look, Phil, even if you disagree with what I'm doing, we're doing this. We're going this direction. It doesn't matter what you say. We're going this direction. So then you would think, has Xbox ever been profitable? Because they've been in the industry for a while. There is a lot of people that actually can co-sign this. I've heard this throughout my time covering stuff too. Are you insinuating that the Xbox division isn't profitable? A business nearly 25 years old within Microsoft and still operating is not profitable? Question mark. I have been told in clear terms that outside of a few quarters in the 360 life cycle, the only time Xbox operated at something resembling profitability was the ABK earnings when they were integrated into their reportings, and that's just essentially the money that ABK was making has been added on to their money because it wasn't there the quarter that they're comparing it to. So you can't really count that either. That just naturally happens when you have mergers like this. It's not hyperbolic. It's just that Xbox has a division likely become more simply Microsoft Gaming as a brand, and all the hardware positions folded over with a handful of software studios, think Mojang Tier, and remaining in the studio front, had the ABK merger not gone through. There was actually some stuff that happened that I remember before the ABK deal went through. There was a rumor that was around that if that deal did not go through, that they were going to shut the actual Xbox division down. I remember that specifically because I remember a lot of people were acting like that's not realistic, it's not happening. But what he says here is kind of like, look, if the ABK merger would have went through, it's hard to tell what would have happened to the actual studio or the actual division of Xbox. Based on the conversations that I've had, I think the future of Xbox is over like a combination of a handful of teams at the tiers of Blizzard, COD, Minecraft with a slow bleed of every other team, and studios slowly dying off as layoffs and budget cuts reduce everything as time marches forward. That's the biggest thing that is very discouraging. He did post this Wednesday at 7:20 p.m. Now, we don't know exactly what this means. The way I'm taking it is throughout the next few years, they're going to slowly get rid of these other teams, and they're just going to focus on the breadwinners. They're just going to focus on the people making them all the money because, like I said, when you're no longer focusing on hardware, you don't really need the smaller ones that's probably costing you money in the long run. Ninja Theory, how much money has that really made Microsoft? Maybe, the mocap stuff has been very beneficial. But besides that, in terms of their games, how much money is that realistically made? State of Decay 3, how long has that been in development? They're currently working on that game. It's been in development for a while now. Is it realistic to even make a profit off that game? But you know what's going to make a profit? The Elder Scrolls franchise, Fallout franchise. These games are going to be the one to make them a profit. So I think, you look into something like that, it's disappointing, man. It's disappointing. I was always for acquisitions when it comes to Microsoft, especially, the ABK. I was clear on ABK that I wanted them to buy ABK because I felt like ABK was getting too stagnant and they wasn't really taking any form of risks. And Microsoft was selling me this sell where they were like, look, Game Pass gives us the option and the opportunity to actually take more risks. You know, because we're making this money from Game Pass every month, we're able to take that money and reinvest it into making games that you wouldn't normally see, like a new Banjo or maybe a new Recore. There was a lot of things that they could have done, but unfortunately, we know what happened, man. We know what happened. So let's pop over here again and talk about Game Pass, because someone did ask him a question on Game Pass, and they said, can you tell us anything about the future of Game Pass? Honestly, I don't see how it fits with Xbox's future. It's like a trap they've set for themselves, and now it's hard to get out of. He said this at Friday at 12:03 a.m. So let's get into this, shall we? I wouldn't describe it as being a difficult situation to get out of. It's not a subscription service that has any significant growth. Last time it got any resemblance of a bump is when COD launched last year. But Game Pass has been absurdly high trump rate, so that evenly just settles out. It doesn't sound like that. Expect the service to get a similar bump in the future releases of COD, purely because the obvious factor is it's gone. And the console adoption rate of the Xbox is still backsliding, which the attach rate for Xbox Game Pass is now over 90% of console users versus PC Game Pass users. Look, I've been very vocal that I do think one of the ways that you push Game Pass is to push the hardware, because it's one of the best ways to get people in front of it. Now, obviously, you got smart TVs, you got the PC. They have grown significantly on PC, and that's kind of stagnant at this point. But there's a lot of aspects that's going on here. Okay, and in my personal opinion, people that pick up TVs, they will play a game, but you're not going to get them consistently, in my opinion. You know, most people, they want to play a game that they want to play. They want to play a game on hardware, on PC. You know, there's a lot of aspects on their phone. I just don't see a huge mass majority. Just because the consumer's there does not mean that they're going to consume what you want to give them. And because they access this service on smart TVs doesn't mean it's going to happen. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. So you're right with Game Pass being sort of antiquated in the modern Xbox era. It was a service primarily designed to heavily disrupt the calculated market heading into a market transaction, the PS5, the Xbox Series S and X, to hopefully yield market growth. There's a lot that can be discussed regarding how Game Pass has a model being destroyed by the purchasing habits of Xbox console users for the most part, which is something to note here. I've always disagreed with this statement. I will be the first person to tell you that in terms of their titles, I do think it hurts and cannibalizes their titles on the Xbox platform, especially people that have multiple platforms. Now that they're going a multi-platform approach, those people might actually get it on Xbox just so they don't have to pay the upfront cost. So I've always felt like it does cannibalize to a degree. But for the most part, when it comes to games that are not on there, because that's how it is. It's not on Game Pass. It's not being bought. If you actually like that franchise, you probably weren't going to buy that game anyway. I will say indies get hurt the most, because there are sometimes I even catch myself seeing an indie that's like, yo, is it in Game Pass? I'm willing to try it out. So I see the indie scene getting hurt the most, but a lot of the time these indie scenes, they get so much money up front. Most of them are happy. I've been told from a variety of companies trying to get in Game Pass, and they're not throwing out money like they used to. So I think there is definitely some truth to that, and some things I disagree with. Game Pass discussions trend to have me on the tangents, and I'll just focus on what you asked about. What's the future look like with part of the motivator that drove Microsoft to releasing titles outside of the Xbox ecosystem set to release in places where Game Pass wasn't already available? Remember, Phil Spencer said that a long time ago in that Bethesda thing. It's about giving you exclusives and going where Game Pass is available. Game Pass is not available on PlayStation. It's not available on the Switch. So all that could have a much higher margin of the titles, and I certainly did not. Indiana Jones PS5 release was a tremendous success for the team and the game. For example, one Project Latitude was decided upon internally that the drive to try Game Pass and expand Game Pass into other platforms like Steam and PSN basically evaporated overnight, and it hasn't been brought up since. So they have talked about behind the scenes on maybe bringing Game Pass to other stuff. So, when it comes to this, it's like, look, Game Pass is definitely something that's going to be very beneficial to them. I do feel that in terms of that, it's very sad that they didn't give the games that they actually got a chance. Because I think that Game Pass definitely could have worked if they consistently kept up and made Game Pass like a branch of the hardware. Now, obviously, people are going to say, but Addict, you're biased because you want the hardware. And yeah, I've been very clear on bias towards that. But also at the same time, I do feel like if you went and you looked from quarter to quarter, Game Pass kind of started really going spiraling downhill in terms of number growth when they stopped caring about the hardware. And I'm not talking about when they did the Parker the business update meeting when they did last year. I'm talking about before then, when they stopped caring about how they promoted the Xbox and they stopped caring on saying that stuff like Starfield's playable on everywhere. Marketing terms like this you don't have to use if you don't want to, and they were specifically using Game Pass and Game Pass and other services like cloud service to undermine the actual hardware. And I'm sorry, that hurt them. So someone else asked, longtime listener, first time caller, how does Halo Studios fit into what happened today? I assume their next project, rumored the Halo 1 remake, is do or die at them at this point. For any dev in the Western studio who is under Microsoft, any project is do or die for them. If you think you're working on a sacred cow, you're wrong. As for Halo Studios, I'm honestly not entirely convinced that the game ever ships. That's not me speaking on the quality of the project, mind you, just more speaking to the publishing reality Microsoft is faced with. They own Call of Duty, the first-person IP that basically took over Halo's entire presence in the first-person market genre as years tickled by. As far as market impact, Halo has not had a large market hit in a long time, and the studio has faced nothing but turmoil since 4 shipped. I feel like you can pick basically any year since 2018 and say was the worst year for Halo as an IP, and you'd be on the money. For the most part, despite folks always thinking budgets somehow don't exist for Xbox, they always have. And when you have Call of Duty, which is more of a production pipeline than it is a game, a pipeline which requires ever-increasing investment in order to maintain, while Halo hasn't come close to something that level of return on investment, you eventually are going to have to make a decision on which one of the has a future and which one of them doesn't. Completely agree. When you have something like a Call of Duty, I will say I was a little naive to think that they would work on both. When they were talking about buying these, I really did think that there was a chance that they would work on them both. I thought that they would go and, really put their best foot forward and try to hit the market on any means as possible. The only thing I really liked is I felt like they were going to be able to hit the market in a way where they wasn't relying on one title. They had Halo, they had Call of Duty, they had Gears, they had Fable, they had Forza Motorsports, Forza Horizon. And I thought they were going to have all this content and they were going to be able to feed it into Game Pass, feed it into the hardware, and just do better overall in the industry. Look, were they ever going to compete with PlayStation? Debatable. PlayStation is a world-renowned IP. World-renowned brand. It's hard to beat that. Hard to mess with that. And Microsoft has completely dropped the ball in other regions of the world that's not the U.S. for a foreseeable amount of time now. Including the U.S. They've dropped the ball with that a few times too. So were they ever going to do that? Probably not. But I feel like they could have competed better. And here, I know a lot of people in the industry don't care about the Xbox living or dying. But then you look at the rest of the industry. What is going on? Nintendo raising the prices on everything, jumping out the window of $80 titles. PlayStation probably being one of the biggest anti-consumer companies out there. Why? Because they have no competition. I've always been for Microsoft doing better with the Xbox because it puts a competing factor in the industry where there's not just two people fighting over your money. There's three. I'd have liked 4 or 5. Maybe Apple could have got into it. Google could have got into it. But you got these companies that they just see dollar bills. And it's okay to just see dollar bills. But at the same time, this is not a business-to-business transaction. You're selling to a consumer, and I feel like a lot of these big companies, the majority of their money comes from business transactions. So it's hard for them to get themselves into selling to a consumer. So a lot of them just back out. What do I think is the future of Xbox? In my personal opinion, they probably will make another hardware. I don't know if it's going to be a third-party manufacturing from like Asus or maybe HP or a variety of other companies that could make this sucker. I don't know what that looks into. Now, if these companies do good customer service, they work good with Microsoft, and you don't really see the difference between using Microsoft's hardware or using their hardware, I'm cool with that. But then, got to make more money. It's got to be more expensive because now you're not cutting the third person and you're bringing another person in to make your hardware, and they got to make money too. So it's going to naturally raise the console up. And then if the console is at a price to the everyday person, and it's a premium product, and they only sell 2 to 3 million, does that mean the next Final Fantasy? Does that mean the next Cyberpunk, the next Witcher? When there's only 5 to 6 million out there, companies port it to that type of consumer base, to that type of install base? That is my biggest worry. My biggest worry is investing into an ecosystem going forward that you won't be able to play the games that you want to play on. Now, obviously, you could say I'm reaching, and I feel like that's more me just cautious towards the future. I don't know what the future holds. I don't got a crystal ball. And unlike other people on the internet that tell you they have a crystal ball and they know the future, they don't. I'm just a concerned Xbox fan that just wants to be able to come home, sit down, put this sucker on or whatever succeeds this, and just play games. Just want to be able to invest into an ecosystem without worrying about what's going to happen next to it. That's it. That's all. Point blank, period. I just want the brand to care like they want to compete. I want to feel like they want to compete. And I'm going to be honest with you, for a while now, I don't feel like that. I feel like they are on coast mode until they can get out of the hardware market. Regardless if it's next generation or the generation after that, or they launch that sucker next generation and we have one of those sayings where you get in the middle of it and they're not really supporting it. They got 5 people in a closet working on it and it's just not getting the same support, because there's more to console than just launching it. There's a whole generation you got to support it, from hardware teams to software teams to making sure things run functionally correctly. How many times do you see on Twitter where they say, we understand people are having issues with Fortnite. They have a good amount of people working on it. What happens when they half that? Or a quarter of that and then half that again? That's the things I worry about going forward. I know a lot of people like to say I do doom and gloom stuff, and I get it. But for years on this platform, I've done nothing but speak positive and really push Microsoft into the way that I feel would be better for their brand. Doesn't mean I'm right. Never ran a multi-trillion-dollar company, but I'm a gamer that consumes. And I can only go off that as an influencer. But anyway, tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm very curious for you guys' opinion. It's a long video, 24 minutes. If you guys got to this point, put in the comment section you got to this point, because I'm very curious if you did. Once again, if you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button. It's all, your support's always appreciated. I want to thank everyone for coming through, for watching this. You guys always support me, and I want to appreciate that. You follow me on Twitter at LordAddictIOP. You can also follow me on YouTube at Addict Arena. I'm going to be streaming Wind Waker with 3 hearts for the foreseeable future. But anyway, in the comment section below, put all of that. And until next time, this is Gaming Addict. I'm out of here. Peace. Whoo! My voice is going out. Sorry about that transition mess up. Push the wrong button. Talk to you guys later.